So today on Connected Learning I have Cécile Brun. She is one of the few people of our Connected Learners that's managed to finish, and we've just had a quick conversation before this and she was saying that she watched Adrian's piece, who was saying you've just got to finish it, and Cécile has managed to do that just in time. In fact, this is the last of these particular video discussions with some of the participants. Starting tomorrow, we'll be launching the not the Connected Learners, but the workshop learners are going to be showing their work. And so for the next 10 weeks, we'll be running interviews with them. And after that, we have something new planned, but there'll be more details of that later. So let's start with a quick introduction for Cécile. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, Cécile? Tell us who you are, where you're living at the moment, and a little bit about your project too.
I'm living in England at the moment, but I'm French and I've traveled quite a lot, and I'm more a photographer but not really professional. And actually I was doing some work online and following some classes, and one was Phonar, about the narrative of the photo, that I found very helpful, and they did advertise for the Connected Learning, and actually, both of them were just answering the question I had about where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, and in a very informal ways, and I really like it. So I just joined the wagon.
That's great. So this is I think your second multimedia project, because you did try one earlier on, and just to sort of get a feel for it. Is that right, or have you done others before this?
No, I've never done one, and actually the first one that I did was not really one. It's just I was a bit lost when I started the classes of what I needed to do. Even if you think that is going to be quite straightforward, it's not as straightforward as it is. And so I started to make one, but there were a lot of issues of access. Like there were a lot of things that I couldn't do, and so I couldn't finish it, and I was a bit stubborn, and actually I should have realized that earlier and just stop it and start a new one a bit earlier. But yeah, it's a learning curve, so that's
Maybe you could just take us through the process of choosing your character, deciding how you're going to put the whole thing together, and how did you put it out on the timeline? How did you decide on that final edit as you did?
So choosing the character, that was an easy one, because actually this is my daughter, and that's why I was, when I write to you before, is sometimes we try to look for story outside, and I was a bit like, the subject is a subject that is interesting me since a long time, and it's something very important for her, and most of the time around us we have very empowering stories, or people that have very nice things to say, or nice characters. So when I asked her, I was thinking she would say no, and she said, oh yes. And so that was great. So it gave me a lot of freedom, because I could rerun things that was not working, and at the same time I was saying I was less shy and yes, of doing mistake or whatsoever, because someone I can talk freely, and at the same time I think for her also it was easier, because she knows me, so she can tell what it's okay for her and not, and things like that. So in a way I think starting with someone close to you, that was an advice that's been given, and I think it's a very good advice. Just like not trying to find something astonishing very far. Most of the time, just like look at your surrounding.
That's really true. I mean, if I think back about some of the most successful projects that my students have done, they're often the ones close to home, rather than the students who've travelled to the other side of the world. They have great access. They manage to go back again and again. They get to know their characters well, and they feel comfortable. They're in an environment that is really good. I mean, I think once you get better and you feel more comfortable with the equipment and things, then it's fine for you to then start moving out of that comfort zone. It's probably good actually to do that. But in the very early stages, as you've done, as you quite rightly say, finding somebody in your community, or somebody close to you, or somebody who you can feel comfortable with, and then you can sort of spend the time thinking about all those technical things that you have to worry about for the first time, and getting all of those things right. So you started with your daughter, and as I said, great character. She speaks really well. You've got a nice, clean interview as well, which is so important that you have clean sound without too many background distractions, etc. So it's easy to find her to follow her dialogue, and also she speaks very clearly as well, which makes it again much easier to follow the story than if you have somebody who sort of rambles a bit or who speaks in a very strong dialect that's difficult to understand. So okay, you've done your interview with her. How did you then decide to choose what you decided to choose? You know, how did you sort of cut it up and say, okay, this comes here, and this comes here, and this comes here?
That's first, I had quite a much longer interview than I thought I would have, and that's quite a real bonus actually, because it helps you to go to the important things, because the first time I had 10-minute pieces and it was way too long. So it made you really focus on what is important and what is not, what is relevant and not.
Well, I mean, if I was editing it, I think I'd still cut it down a little bit more. And that's one of the things that we always do as, you know, producers. Whenever I go to my producers, if I'm working on a story, and I show them what I've got, they normally will cut it down by at least a third, if not more than that. Because, you know, we see all these things that we want to put in, and it's very difficult for us to know what to take out. And I think, you know, yours, I think it's about 4 minutes at the moment. Yeah, so I think I would cut it down to 2 or 3, maybe 3 minutes. We could take 2 minutes out. But as I said, that's not a bad thing, because it's always better to have more and to go to your editors with, you know, something that's a bit longer, and then they can then take it from there, rather than going to them something that's really sort of cut down and then they don't have much leeway to do anything with it. So tell me a little bit about the technical side as well, because this was your first project. Obviously, as you said, you're a very keen photographer, and you're familiar with photographic equipment. Did you have to buy new equipment or borrow new equipment, and was that difficult to master?
Actually, what happened is that I was shooting with a reflex, but it was an old one, and it was with broken autofocus, and it's been on my mind to change it since quite a long time, so I already knew what I wanted. And actually that was the one that was also doing the movie, but so I had to relearn how to use this new camera and to learn also which was not that bad, and I never shooted video before. So I did try with several small camera and things like that, just to see what was possible and not. And just like when people were saying you don't pan, I try, and I said yes, that's not working. But I did it just like in my garden, just so that was this part too. And for the sound, I never edited sound before, so to have a clear line and avoiding sounds outside. And even if you're for me, I didn't really concentrate on the picture, because that's something that is the easiest for me. But I realized that at one point I'm not very pleased with the focal length I chose for one of the interview, for instance. I think I would have, because I didn't really pay attention to it.
And one of the things that I often recommend when you're doing interviews is that, sorry, if you can hear a screaming baby in the background, that is coming from me. It's not coming from your home or wherever you are listening to this. Yeah, one of the things that I recommend when you're doing interviews is to take, in between the questions, that you reframe slightly. So you go longer, you go shorter, you know, you go wider, or you come in tighter, and then you've got sort of a bit of variety in the shots that you've got. But as you said, you know, trying to get that right is really important, because the interview plays such a big part what you do, and you should always think about them as portraits. As a photographer, you're setting up an environmental portrait and light it and do everything as you would do as if you were doing a proper portrait, and then start the interview. And then what about so you shot it on this camera that you've got, the new camera. Did you have any other accessories? You must have had a microphone as well, did you?
Yeah, I had the microphone, and that's very, very handy, actually, the small Cavalier. It's very nice. And as I wanted another shoot, just I use my my telephone. I mean, yeah, I've got a smartphone. And but that was quite funny, because actually I had to put it on the music stand and put it in reverse. And but it was for me really like I wanted to have also different video for practicing editing from different places. And so I tried this. I use it a bit, but for the sounds it was coming from the main camera. And the Cavalier is really nice. The only thing is just like it did record very well the people that was answering the questions, but not my question. But that was not a big deal, because I didn't want to include them anyway. So.
Okay, well, you know, I'm really happy with what you've done. Can you just reflect back and think about people who may be setting out now? There's a lot of connected learners who've not managed to finish their projects, and you have. What are the kind of key learning things that you've had to pick up along the way? What would you say? What would be your advice to somebody who's trying this for the first time?
That would be really preparing the questions right, because even if it's a subject you really know, and actually it's more dangerous when it's a subject that you really know, framing questions so you have a clear answer and a wide answer can be tricky, because sometimes you have an idea of what you want, but the way of formulating your questions doesn't necessarily go through. So spending time on really defining your questions and making a pre-interview, so you have also this connection with the person and you both know where you want to go. I think it's something important that make the editing later much easier, and also take out a bit of the pressure that you have when you're filming, because otherwise it can be a bit hectic and you have to re-ask questions, and the person in front don't necessarily knows where everything is going. So that would be really like to have a set of questions ready, and with some alternatives depending where you want to go, where the person is going to go, because sometimes the answer can surprise you.
It's amazing how many people, when I've been doing these interviews, particularly people who've been doing it for the first time, have not picked out technical points. You know, they've not said, well, you've got to learn this, or you've got to learn that. It's been very much about the interviews and how important it is to prepare well, to think about the sound on the interview and the lighting, and just getting that right, you know, because that's what's going to drive the story. So really good point. Thanks, Cécile. Well, congratulations. This is, as I said, you just came in just before we finished up. As I said, tomorrow this is going out. We're actually recording this slightly earlier in the week, but this is going out on Saturday, and on Sunday we will be launching the project that we've been doing with the workshop people. So lots of things happening around that, and there'll be lots of interviews and things to come after that. But this is the last interview from the Connected Learning. Cécile, one more time, thank you very much for your time.
No. And thank you very much for you. It's been a very interesting learning curve.